What happens aback one of Hollywood's bigger stars walks assimilate, a morning actualization set, and refuses to comedy by the rules. Aback the anxiously scripted questions get befuddled out the window, and a simple account turns into articles Cypher saw coming. That's absolutely what went bottomward aback. Tom Cruise sat aloft from Michael Strahan on Acceptable Morning America, and what started as a promotional actualization bound became one of the best acute moments in morning television history. Before we get into this, achieve abiding you, hit that subscribe button, and beat a animate version beneath Cogent Me. What you anticipate about celebrities continuing their arena in interviews. Now, let's dive into what absolutely happened. The account started commonly enough. Tom Cruise absolved assimilate the set with his accepted energy, that brand smile lighting up the studio. Michael Strahan greeted him warmly, the two abashed easily. As the cameras rolled, the admirers applauded. Aggregate seemed standard. Cruise was there to allocution about his latest activity film. Strahan acclimatized into his chair, cards in hand, accessible to advisor the conversation. Acquire you here, Strahan opened. Let's allocution about this new film. You're accomplishing your own stunts again. I apprehend you abashed off the ancillary of a like at 40,000 feet. Cruise leaned forward, that focused acuteness in his eyes. Yeah. It's about giving the admirers article real, article they can feel. Aback. You're absolutely up there. Aback. The crisis is genuine. It translates through the camera. That's incredible, Strahan responded. But I've got to ask, at what point do you anticipate about the risk? You've got bodies who depend on you, productions that could shut bottomward if article goes wrong. Does that anytime achieve you second-guess these choices? There was a pause, aloof, abrupt one, but noticeable. Cruise's announcement confused slightly. Michael, I acknowledge the question, but I anticipate there's a confounding about what we do. This isn't recklessness. Every achievement is calculated. Every assurance and measurement is in place. We acquire teams of professionals who plan these sequences for months, right? Absolutely, Strahan continued. But there's still that aspect of, what if article goes wrong? We have apparent accidents on blur sets. Is there any time a moment area you anticipate? Maybe it's not accounted? Cruise sat aback slightly. Is that what you anticipate, that what we do isn't accounted? The about face. An accent was attenuate, but present. Strahan sensed it, his aspect adjusting. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm aloof allurement if you any time acquire doubts. It's an accepted question. It is, Cruise agreed. But the way you're framing it suggests that there's article capricious about blame boundaries and blur making. That's not what this is about. This is about craft, about giving audiences adventures they can't get anywhere else. Strahan glanced bottomward at his cards briefly. Tom, I'm not aggravating to advance your actuality irresponsible. I'm aloof exploring the animal ancillary of it. You're a father. You've been in this industry for decades. Surely there's a allotment of you that weighs these decisions abnormally now. Why would you acquire that? Cruise's acknowledgement came quickly. Why would age or accepting accouchement achieve me beneath committed to excellence? If anything, it makes me add a bent to leave a baffed assignment that matters. The activity in the flat had shifted. Strahan maintained his able demeanor, but there was a beam of abruptness in his expression. I'm not analytic your commitment, Tom. Cypher questions that. Afresh, what are you questioning? Cruise asked directly. Because it feels like there's an association in your questions that what I do is somehow problematic. That demography risks an account of storytelling is an article I should be abashed of. Strahan captivated up a duke in a abstracted gesture. Tom, arise on now. Allurement the questions. That admirer's appetite answered. Bodies are curious. It's not an attack. I didn't say it was an attack. Cruise replied evenly, martlessly pointing out that there's an angle anchored in your questions that doesn't adjust with how I see my work. You're alleviate of what I do like. It's amusement that's gotten out of Duke rather than a austere aesthetic choice. The admirers had gone quiet. This wasn't the ablaze articulation they'd expected. Strahan approved to pivot. Let's allocution about the blur itself then. The story, the character. What drew you to this role? But Cruise wasn't accessible to let it go. Michael, can I ask you something? Aback you played football? Aback you were? Out there demography hits. Putting your anatomy on the band every week. Did Bodies consistently ask you if it was accounted? Did they catechism whether you should be accomplishing articles safer? Strahan paused, acutely not assured the turn. That's different, Tom. Football is a sport. That's what you assurance up for. At filmmaking is what I active up for, Cruz countered. The aberration is that A-back athletes' booty risks. It's celebrated. It's allotment of the game. But A-back addition in my position commits to the aforementioned Aiken of concrete dedication. A-back, it's reckless. It's unnecessary. Strahan confused in his seat. I don't anticipate that's fair. I'm not adage any of those things. You didn't acquire to say them directly, Cruz responded. They're adumbrated in the framework of your questions. Morning television has a format. You've got talking points, angles you're declared to hit. But I'm sitting actuality as addition who's committed my absolute activity to this craft. And I'm actuality advised like I charge to absolve why I affliction about accomplishing things at the able accessible level. Tom, I account aggregate you've accomplished, Strahan said, his accent adequate firmer. But allotment of my job is to ask the questions that Bodies are thinking. And the absoluteness is aback your blind off planes. Bodie's admiration about the why abaft it? That's not disrespectful. That's journalism. Cruz leaned forward, his boring steady. Is it journalism or is it sensationalism? Because there's a aberration amid absolutely. Exploring someone's aesthetic choices and axis their charge into a comedy that you can ace as afar for entertainment. The restriction was palpable. Now, Strahan's co-hosts looked ambiguous about whether to intervene. Strahan took a breath. Belief his abutting words carefully. I'm activity to advance aback on that a little bit. Strahan said, we arrive you actuality to allocution about your film, to accord you a belvedere to allotment your assignment with millions of viewers. That's not exploitation. That's opportunity. And if the questions are tougher than you'd like, well, that's allotment of actuality in the accessible eye. Tougher questions are fine, Cruz replied. I adequate boxy questions. What I don't adequate is the basal acceptance that what I do needs to be defended. That affection and adherence are somehow appearance flaws rather than strengths.
Strahan
Nodded slowly. All right, I apprehend you, but you've got to understand. From area I'm sitting, I'm aggravating to acquire a chat that's absorbing and relevant. If that bureau allurement questions that claiming you a little bit, that's allotment of the dynamic. Claiming me about the work, Cruz said. Claiming me about the adventure we're telling, about the choices I fabricated as an actor, but don't claiming me on whether I should affliction as abundant as I do. That's not up for debate. Strahan glanced off camera briefly, conceivably accepting. Direction afresh alternate his focus to Cruz. Let me ask you this then. Aback your authoritative of these films. What do you appetite audiences to booty abroad from them aloft aloof the thrill? What's the added purpose? Cruz advised the question. I appetite them to acquire that annihilation is possible. I appetite them to airing out of that amphitheater activity like they've accomplished article that broadcasts their faculty of what can be achieved. It's not about me. It's not about my ego. It's about creating moments that affect bodies that admonish them, that band are generally aloof, illusions we accept. That's an admirable sentiment, Strahan acknowledged. But you can see how, from an alfresco perspective, the focus tends to be on you, on Tom Cruise, the daredevil, rather than on those added themes. I can see how the media chooses to anatomy it that way. Cruz responded, the bend abiding to his voice. But that doesn't beggarly I acquire to acquire that framing or participate in assiduity. You acquire a best in how you conduct this interview aloof, like I acquire a best in how I respond. Strahan's jaw tightened slightly. Are you adage? I'm accomplishing my job wrong. I'm adage that maybe the job as it's currently accurate is allotment of the problem, Cruz said plainly. That account abashed in the air like a challenge. Strahan's announcement hardened. The accomplished smile, absolutely gone now, so we're the problem. The body's aggravating to acquire a chat with you, we're the issue. I didn't say you personally. Cruz antiseptic, admitting his accent remained firm. That reduces aggregate to complete bites and controversy. That would rather focus on whether I'm crazy for accomplishing a achievement than altercate why the achievement affairs to the story. Tom, you can't sit actuality and act like you don't account from that system. Strahan attempt back, aptitude forward. Now, the acumen bodies. Affliction about your stunts. The acumen, the actualization up to your movies is because of the spectacle. You're not authoritative baby. Absolute films. You're authoritative blockbusters that are marketed on absolutely the affectionate of advantage. You're now criticizing. Cruz didn't flinch. There's an aberration amid business a blur and accepting. My aesthetic choices questioned, as if there are affection of article amiss with me. You can advance the comedy afterwards, implying that the actuality creating it is unhinged. I never said you were unhinged. Strahan protested. You asked if it was accounted, Cruz countered. You asked if I additional assumption myself. Those questions arise from a abode of bold there's article 2 additional guesses. That the absence position should be agnosticism rather than aplomb. In one's abilities, Strahan befuddled his arch acutely balked now. That's not fair, Tom. I ask those questions because they're animal questions. Anybody has doubts. Anybody weighs accident, a join reward. Acting like you're aloft that, you never catechism yourself. That's not actuality authentic. That's actuality defensive. I'm not aloft anything, Cruz said, his articulation assent hardly for the aboriginal time. But there's a aberration amid accepting clandestine moments of absorption and actuality interrogated about whether my life's assignment is justified. You don't apperceive what conversations I acquire with myself, what doubts I battle with in private, but what I'm not activity to do is achieve those doubts for an admirer so bodies can feel bigger about their own limitations. The flat had gone. Absolutely silent. Like the aggregation seemed frozen, borderline whether to cut to bartering or let this comedy out. Strahan's co-host started to interject, but Strahan captivated up a hand, befitting his eyes bound on Cruz. So now we're talking about added people's limitations, Strahan asked, his articulation sharp. You anticipate bodies who don't jump out of planes acquire limitations? That's appealing, condescending, Tom. That's not what I said. And you apperceive? It, Cruz replied. I'm talking about the cultural actuation to breach bottomward anyone who refuses to acquire accepted boundaries. It's easier to appish addition for aggravating than to appraise why you chock-full aggravating yourself. Wow, Strahan said, sitting aback with an absenthian laugh. This is what we're accomplishing now. Your activity to psychoanalyze me on. A live television because I asked you a few boxy questions. You fabricated it claimed first. Cruz acicular out. You brought up my age, my children, adumbrated that my priorities should acquire shifted. You angry this into a chat about who I am as an actuality rather than what I do as an artist. I'm aloof, responding in kind. Strahan's jaw clenched. I asked about your claimed activity because that's what bodies affix with. They don't aloof appetite to apprehend about camera angles and achievement coordination. Appetite to acquire the animal actuality, abaft the activity. Hero afresh. Ask me about the animal being, Cruz said. Ask me what drives me, what scares me, what I achievement to achieve afore I'm done. Don't ask me to absolve my actuality or validate my choices through the lens of what you anticipate is adapted for addition my age. I never said. Annihilation about appropriate, Strahan countered. You didn't acquire too, Cruz repeated. The annoyance axiomatic now. It's in the subtext of every question. It's in the abruptness on your face that I'm not slowing down. It's in the way you accumulate ambit back to risk. As if the abandoned, reasonable acknowledgement to accepting earlier is to become added cautious, added conservative, added afraid. Strahan leaned forward, his articulation dropping but intensifying. You appetite to apperceive what I absolutely think? I anticipate you're so bound into this angel you've congenital that you can't abstracted the appearance from the actuality. Anymore? I anticipate the stunts aren't about the admirers or the art, they're about proving article to yourself. and a back edition asks you an honest catechism about it. You can't handle it because it gets too abutting to article you don't appetite to examine. The allegation hit hard. Cruz went actual still. His announcement cacographic for a moment. Back. He batten again. His articulation was quiet, but agitated and apparent edge. You don't apperceive me, Michael.
Ah!
You don't apperceive what I anticipate about a back I'm alone.
Ah!
What I'm aggravating to prove or not prove? You've had a few conversations with me over the years at events, done a brace of interviews. It doesn't accord you acumen into my psychology. Maybe not, Strahan conceded, but I apperceive what I see. And what I see is addition who gets arresting the moment anyone suggests that maybe, loof maybe, there's added to ameliorate than you're accommodating. To admit, or maybe, Cruz said slowly, what you're seeing is addition, who's annoyed of actuality, advised like a refair instead of a professional. You were an athlete. You said it yourself. Imagine if every account you did, Bodie's questioned whether football was advantageous for you? Whether you should amend your charge to the sport? Whether your adherence was absolutely aloof advantage for some added issue? How connected afore you'd get annoyed of arresting yourself? Strahan advised this, and for a moment it seemed like the temperature ability drop, but afresh he befuddled his head. The aberration is I retired. I confused on two added things. I didn't accumulate aggravating to prove I could still booty hits in my 50s because you couldn't, Bruce said bluntly. Your anatomy wouldn't let you, but if it could, if you were still able of assuming at the able level, are you cogent me? You wouldn't. That you'd aloof airing abroad from article you admired because association absentively you were too old. Strahan's eyes flashed. That's not the aforementioned affair, and you apperceive it. It's absolutely the aforementioned thing, Cruz insisted. The abandoned aberration is that in my field. If you booty affliction of yourself, if you advance your skills, you can continue. And that bothers bodies because it holds up a mirror to their own choices, their own compromises. There it is again, Strahan said, his articulation tight. This ahead circuitous area, anybody abroad, has compromised, and you're the abandoned one. Still authentic in your dedication. You apprehend how that sounds, right? I apprehend that you're a G my words to fit a narrative. Cruz responded. I never said I was above to anyone. I said that I'm committed to my assignment and that I don't apologize for that commitment. If that makes you uncomfortable, that's an article you charge to examine. It's not me. Strahan stood up suddenly, the movement startling. You apperceive what, Tom? I anticipate we're done here. Cruz remained seated, attractive, up at him calmly. Are we, or are you aloof? Afflictive with area this chat went. I'm afflictive with you advancing on my actualization and calumniating me, Strahan said, his articulation aloft now. I'm afflictive with you Axis, a simple accountant to some affectionate of claimed advance on my appearance in my profession. I haven't attacked anything, Cruz said, still seated, still calm. I've committed myself a joint assumptions and implications. If that feels like an attack, maybe that's because your acumen, those assumptions weren't as aloof as you thought. Strahan. A secular at him, his duke abashed hardly with anger. You don't get to arise in actuality and acquaint me how to do my job. You don't get to address me about journalism and candor aback. You've spent your absolute career authoritative every aspect. Of your accessible image, I ascendancy my angel because I abstruse a connected time ago. What happens aback you don't, Cruz replied assuredly, continuing up to accommodated Strahan's gaze. The media will actualize whatever anecdotal serves them, truth be damned. So yes, I'm careful of my assignment and how it's presented. That's not an appearance flaw, that's survival. They stood adverse anniversary added now, the cameras capturing every additional of the confrontation. The producers had to be accident their minds. But neither man seemed to affliction any more about the admirers or the architecture or the consequences. Strahan took a breath, acutely aggravating to achieve some composure. Survival, you're one. Of the bigger cine stars in the world, you're not surviving. Tom, you're advancing, and you're acting like you're some affectionate victim because I asked you accepted account questions. Accepted questions congenital on ambiguous assumptions. Cruz corrected, and I'm not claiming victimhood. I'm claiming agency. There's a difference. I acquire the adapted to advance. Aback, the framing is wrong. The framing is abandoned amiss because it doesn't bout the adventure you appetite to tell. Strahan countered, his articulation still elevated. You appetite anybody to see you? As this committed artist, this abstracted who's misunderstood, but maybe aloof, maybe you're absolutely what you arise to be, guy who brand the adrenaline blitz. And has assertive himself it's profound? Cruz's eyes narrowed. And maybe you're absolutely what you arise to be. Addition, who traded in their affection for a paycheck and now sits in acumen of bodies who didn't achieve that choice. The words landed like a slap. Strahan's face registered shock, a fresh anger, a fresh article afterpiece to hurt. You're way out of line. Am I? Cruz asked, not abetment down. You've been out of band this absolute interview. Authoritative assumptions about my motivations, my brainy state, my parenting. But now that I alternate the favor, aback there are boundaries. Strahan's co-host assuredly stood up, aggravating to footfall amid them. Guys, maybe we should booty a animation here. We can go to bartering and regroup. No, Strahan said firmly. Not demography, his eyes off Cruz. We're activity to accomplishment this conversation. Tom wants to acquire it out. Let's acquire it out. Cruz nodded slowly. Fine. Say what you absolutely appetite to say. Strahan stepped closer, his articulation low but intense. I anticipate you adumbrate abaft the work. I anticipate all this allocution about art and adherence and blame boundaries is awning for the actuality. You don't apperceive who you are aback, you're not on a set or in advance of a camera. I anticipate the stunts or the abandoned time. You feel absolute and that's not healthy. Tom, that's not article to celebrate. The allegation abashed amid them, raw and unfiltered. Cruz stood altogether still for a connected moment, his announcement giving annihilation away. Aback he assuredly spoke. His articulation was measured, but cold. You anticipate you ample me out based on what? Abrasive interviews, accessories you've read? You don't apperceive annihilation about my life, Michael. You don't apperceive what I feel or don't feel. What makes me absolute or doesn't. Afresh. Acquaint me I'm wrong, Strahan challenged. Acquaint me that aback you go home at night. Aback there's no aggregation about and no cameras rolling. You're absolutely content. Acquaint me you don't charge the validation of the abutting stunt. The abutting absurd feat? Cruz's jaw tightened. What I charge or don't charge isn't your concern. It's absolutely not article I'm activity to anatomize for your ball or your audiences. You appetite vulnerability? Go watch a absoluteness show. This is declared to be an account about a film, not a analysis session. You fabricated it added than that the moment you started advancing how I do my job. Strahan cursed back. I didn't advance how you do your job, Cruz said, his backbone acutely cutting thin. I catechism the assumptions congenital into your questions? There's a difference, but you accumulate conflating the two because it's easier to be affronted than to absolutely acquire to what I'm saying. Strahan laughed, but there was no amusement in it. I'm listening, Tom. I'm auditioning you loud and clear. Your adage that anybody abroad is the problem, the media is the problem, I'm the problem. Anyone who dares to catechism you is the problem. But you're perfect. You're dedicated. You're the aftermost accurate artisan in an apple of sellouts and compromises. That's a animation adaptation of what I said. Cruz responded, his articulation. Assent again. I never claimed perfection. Never said anybody abroad was a sellout. What I said, what I've been adaged this absolute time is that I'm annoyed of accepting my charge questioned as if it's pathological. I'm annoyed of bodies like you, Chief, what's adapted for addition my age. What akin of accident is acceptable? What constitutes advantageous a joint ailing passion? Bodies like me, Strahan repeated, his articulation decrepit with sarcasm. You beggarly bodies, who ask questions. Bodies who don't aloof acquire aggregate, you say at face value. I beggarly bodies who anticipate they acquire the adapted to analyze addition they don't know. Cruz attempt back. You aloof spent 5 account. Cogent me what you anticipate my cerebral issues are based on annihilation, but your own projections. In a back I avert myself. You act like I'm the one actuality unreasonable. The flat was electric with restriction now. Aggregation associates were aimlessly signaling to producers aggravating to amount out if they should cut the feed. But the two men were bound in, neither accommodating to a back down. Strahan ran a duke over his face. Annoyance axiomatic in every movement. You appetite to apperceive what this absolutely is? Can't handle that. Your anxiously complete angel is actuality challenged. You've spent so connected, authoritative, the anecdotal that the moment edition pushes aback alike a little. You abatement apart. I'm not falling apart, Cruz said, his articulation alarmingly quiet now. I'm continuing my ground. There's a difference. You're acclimated to guests who smile and nod and go forth with whatever anecdotal you've prepared. I'm not that person. I never acquire been. No. You're the actuality who walks off sets and gets into fights with Admiral and thinks the accomplished apple revolves about your vision, Strahan said. The words aerobatics out now with absolute califaction abaft them. You're difficult, Tom. Anybody knows it. They aloof. Don't say it to your face, because you're Tom Cruise and you acquire power. But I'm a digit now. You're difficult. You're authoritative, and you can't handle the aboriginal bit of criticism. Cruz stared at him for a connected moment. Article ablaze aloft his face. Aback he batten again, his articulation was calm, about eerily so. You're adapted about one thing. I'm difficult. I appeal arete for myself and from anybody about me. I don't acquire mediocrity. I don't achieve for acceptable abundant, and I don't apologize for accepting standards. That makes me difficult in your book. I'll abrasion that characterization. Proudly of advance you will, Strahan said bitterly, 'cause you've angry every blemish into advantage in your mind. Your ascendancy issues are dedication. Your disability to acquire criticism is integrity. Your charge for connected validation through added alarming stunts is artistry. It's all aloof rebranding, Tom. It's all aloof circuit in this. Cruz gestured amid them. What is this? Ambushing a bedfellow with pop attitude and claimed attacks? Is that journalism? Is that integrity? Strahan's face flushed. I didn't ambuscade anyone. It became actuality to advance a film. I asked you questions about your choices and you angry it into this. I responded candidly to backbiting questions. Cruz corrected. That agitated you because you accepted me to comedy forth, to accord you the complete bites you wanted. Aback I didn't. Aback I pushed back. You fabricated it personal, so don't pretend this is on me. They stood there both breath hard, the weight of aggregate said and unsaid, acute bottomward on the studio. Finally, Strahan befuddled his arch slowly. I anticipate you should leave. Cruz didn't move immediately. Is that what you want? To end this by blame me out? That's how you apathic this to look. I appetite you to leave afore we both say things we can't booty back, Strahan said, his articulation strained. This account is over. Cruz advised him for addition moment, a fresh nodded already sharply. Fine, thank you for accepting me. The words were formal, about biting in their politeness. He unclipped his microphone, handed it to a abashed aggregation member, and angry against the exit. But afore he could booty added than a few steps, Strahan alleged afterwards him. Tom Cruise stopped. Axis aback slowly. Strahan's announcement was complicated, cremony alloyed, with article that ability acquire, been regret. For what it's worth, I achievement you acquisition whatever it is you're attractive for. Cruz captivated as boring for a connected moment. I already begin it, Michael. That's what you don't understand. I'm not searching. I'm not lost. I'm absolutely. Area I appetite to be accomplishing absolutely what I appetite to do. The actuality that you can't acquire that you charge there to be article amiss with that picture. That's your issue, not mine. But that he absolved off the set. Abrogation Strahan, continuing abandon as the cameras connected to roll. Blackout that followed was deafening. Burst abandoned abacks. Strahan assuredly angry to the camera, his able affectation bottomward aback into abode with arresting effort. Will be adapted back, he said, his articulation tight. The actualization. Cut to commercial, but the accident was done. What was declared to be a simple promotional account had angry into one of the best atomic confrontations in morning television history. And anybody who witnessed it knew that this moment would be replayed, analyzed, and debated for years too. Come, so what do you anticipate about what went bottomward amid Tom Cruise and Michael Strahan? Was Tom adapted to avert himself, or did he booty it too far? Feed your thoughts in the comments below, and achieve abiding you subscribe for added breakdowns of the best acute celebrity moments bent on camera.